I first heard the hum of the Red Thread Labyrinth long before I found its entrance. At the time, I didn't know what the sound was, only that it vibrated through the soles of my feet when I walked certain streets at night, as if something alive slept beneath the pavement. My friends joked that it was just the subway, or the old boiler system under District 7, or my imagination working overtime. But the city had a way of speaking to me in pulses and tremors, in a language only my bones seemed willing to hear. I used to think that was loneliness. Now I know better. It was around midnight when the hum grew strong enough to make my teeth ache. I was walking home after another shift at the archives, coat buttoned tight against the cold drizzle. Streetlights flickered with their usual apathy, and stray dogs sifted through trash at the corners. Everything felt the same as always until it didn't. I stopped under a rusted pedestrian bridge because the pavement beneath me, the exact patch of cracked concrete, shook, not violently, but in a steady, rhythmic way. A heartbeat, one that wasn't mine. I crouched, pressing my palm to the ground. The vibration intensified. You feel it too. The voice scraped against the air like a match striking stone. I turned sharply. A woman stood in the shadows between two dumpsters. Her coat was soaked, plastered against her thin frame. She stepped forward just enough for me to see her face. Not old, not young, but stretched tight with worry and something like reverence. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "The path's calling you," she said. "The red threads. They don't hum for everyone." I should have walked away. I should have told her to get lost. Instead, I swallowed the rising pulse of curiosity tightening beneath my ribs. "What threads?" I said. She lifted one trembling hand and pointed to a storm drain behind the dumpsters. "Down there." I almost laughed. The drain cover was barely large enough for a child to slip through. "That's ridiculous," I said. "Is it?" she asked, tilting her head. "Or are you just afraid you'll fit after all?" She left before I could respond. One moment there, the next slipping into the darkness with a silence that felt inhuman. I stood staring at the drain, listening to the hum that was now unmistakably coming from below. I don't know why I lifted the grate. I don't know why I squeezed myself into the narrow chute, scraping my shoulders raw. I don't know why I didn't go home, shower, and sleep off the madness. Maybe the woman was right. Maybe the threads had been calling me for a long time, and I had mistaken their pull for restlessness. The chute dropped me into an old maintenance tunnel, long abandoned. The air was thick with particles that tasted metallic on my tongue. Ahead, faint light flickered, red light, pulsing like veins illuminated from within. I began walking. Every step echoed too loudly, as if the tunnel swallowed sound but spat it back distorted. The hum grew louder, threading through my skull until it felt like I was walking inside a living throat. When the tunnel opened into the first chamber, I froze. Thousands of glowing red threads hung from the ceiling in long, trembling strands, like luminescent vines. Some draped along the floor, others drifted midair as if suspended by invisible currents. They moved not randomly but with intention, like they were breathing. I reached out to touch one. The moment my fingertips brushed the glowing strand, a cold spark shot through my arm and lightning flashed behind my eyes. For a second I saw myself, from above, from behind, from angles impossible for a human viewpoint. My reflection, multiplied in ways that made my stomach twist. I jerked my hand back, but the thread didn't release me. It clung, winding around my wrist like an eager pet. The glow brightened, and something like a whisper slipped into my ear. So close I felt phantom breath brush my skin. "Come." My lungs tightened. I pulled harder, and the thread snapped cleanly, leaving a faint burn across my skin. The whisper faded. The hum receded into the walls. Something had chosen me. I should have climbed out. I should have run. Instead, I pocketed the broken piece of thread. Why, I still can't explain, and walked deeper. The passage twisted unexpectedly, like it rearranged itself as I moved. At times, I felt the walls expanding around me, opening into cavernous spaces where the red glow dripped from above like blood-soaked rain. Other times the path narrowed so sharply that I had to turn sideways to squeeze through, my breath brushing the cold stone. I checked my phone for service. Nothing. The battery icon flickered, then died entirely, though it had been half-charged when I left the archive. I tried not to panic. The labyrinth had no map, no logic, no sense of direction. But every turn felt deliberate, as if the place knew where it wanted me to go. Soon I began to hear whispers again, not from a single location, but everywhere. Some sounded like my own voice, repeated back to me at a delay. Others sounded like strangers murmuring names I didn't recognize. At one point, I swear I heard my mother's voice. Not her speaking voice, her crying voice. The one I heard through the bedroom wall the night my father left for good. "Stop," I whispered, pressing my hands over my ears. "Stop. Stop." The threads around me shivered in response. I kept walking. The second chamber was larger than any subway station I'd ever seen, stretching so far that the red glow faded at the edges. The floor was woven, yes, woven, from millions of thin, glowing strands forming shifting patterns beneath my feet. As I stepped forward, the weave rippled outward, rearranging itself. Footprints appeared. Not mine. Fresh ones. Barefoot. Small. I felt my throat close. Someone else had been here recently. I followed the prints because the alternative, wandering aimlessly into the darkness, felt worse. As I walked deeper into the chamber, the hum grew rhythmic, almost musical. The threads above chimed faintly, like wind passing through 1,000 violins. It might have been beautiful if it didn't feel so deliberate, so aware of my presence. Then I saw it. In the center of the chamber stood a figure, small, thin, hunched. A child. He faced away from me. Strands of red thread wrapped around his arms like living bracelets. Hey, I whispered, stepping closer. Are you lost? The boy didn't turn. He didn't breathe. I moved slowly, very slowly, heart pounding hard enough to bruise my ribs. The closer I got, the more wrong he looked. His skin was pale, almost translucent. The glowing red threads seemed to pulse beneath his flesh. Are you okay? I tried again. The boy lifted his head with a slow, unnatural motion, like a puppet being tugged by strings. His neck turned too far. His pupils glowed the same red as the threads. You shouldn't have come, he said. His voice wasn't a child's voice. It wasn't a human voice at all. Before I could react, the ground beneath me rippled and opened, threads snapping apart to create a hole that swallowed me whole. I fell. The boy's red eyes watched me drop into the darkness, unblinking. As I plummeted, the threads wrapped around my arms, my legs, my throat. Not violently, but like grasping hands trying to steady me, trying to pull me deeper. The hum grew deafening. Something whispered my name, and then everything went black. I woke with the taste of metal in my mouth. At first I thought I was still falling. My body felt weightless, my stomach suspended somewhere above me. But then the sensation settled, and I realized I was lying on something soft. Too soft. I pushed myself up slowly. The ground wasn't ground at all. It was a web, an intricate, trembling mesh of red threads that held my weight as though I were lying on the surface of a spider's web woven by something massive. I shifted carefully, afraid that one wrong move might send me plunging again. The air was warmer here, almost humid, and it carried a faint sweet scent, like rotting fruit. The glow from the threads illuminated everything with a low, pulsating light. I sat up fully and froze. All around me, suspended in the air like grotesque cocoons, were shapes, human shapes, wrapped tightly in layers of red thread. Some were curled as if asleep, others stretched stiffly like mummies. Their faces were covered entirely, smooth and featureless beneath the threads. I crawled backward instinctively, keeping my hands and knees on the trembling web. Every movement sent waves through the structure, making the hanging shapes sway slightly. My breathing quickened. Hello, I called out, though I regretted it immediately. The word echoed strangely, swallowed by the cavernous chamber before bouncing back in a distorted whisper. Hello. I clenched my teeth. The labyrinth wasn't just alive, it was listening. Slowly, I maneuvered to the edge of the webbed platform. The threads draped down into darkness, connecting to unseen roots or anchors below. I spotted a path, a thicker braid of threads forming a bridge that extended toward a distant tunnel. I didn't know where it led, but staying here meant waiting to become another cocoon. I wasn't ready for that fate. I stood, balancing carefully. The web shifted under my feet, but it held. As I stepped onto the braided bridge, the threads vibrated, responding to my weight. The hum resumed, quieter here but more focused, like a melody forming itself around me. I kept walking. The bridge twisted in ways that defied architecture, curving like an artery through a massive body. Sometimes I had to duck beneath curtains of threads that swayed as though stirred by breath I couldn't feel. Other times the path split into branching routes, each one glowing at different intensities. I always chose the dimmest path, afraid that the brightest ones were bait. After what felt like an hour, though time was impossible to gauge, I reached the end of the bridge. The tunnel ahead of me was narrow and warm, and the walls weren't stone but something fibrous, as if I'd stepped inside a colossal loom. The threads ran parallel, weaving themselves constantly. Every few seconds one strand slid past another, shifting like a restless snake. I stepped forward. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, the threads tightened and rearranged themselves, blocking the entrance behind me. Panicked, I tried to wedge my fingers between the moving strands, but they cut into my skin with a sting so sharp I yanked my hand back. No turning back. The tunnel was dim, lit only by the faint glow of the threads. As I moved deeper, the temperature rose. Sweat gathered at the back of my neck and slid down my spine. Then I heard footsteps. Not mine. Slow, deliberate, following the same rhythm as the hum. Quickened my pace. The footsteps quickened too. I stopped. They stopped. My throat tightened. I turned my head slightly, trying to peer into the shifting threads behind me, but the tunnel was too dark, too alive. "Who's there?" I asked. Silence. Then, a whisper, so faint I almost thought it came from inside my skull rather than the tunnel. "You're walking the wrong path." My blood ran cold. The voice was mine, not a perfect imitation. It was my voice warped by fear, stretched by echoes, spoken by something that understood how to use it like a mask. "Show yourself," I whispered. The threads beside me undulated. Slowly, as if peeling apart reluctant flesh, the walls opened to reveal a side chamber. The faint red glow spilled out, and something moved within it. Against every instinct screaming at me, I stepped inside. The chamber was small, barely the size of a bedroom. Threads hung like curtains, obscuring shapes that shifted slowly, like silhouettes behind a veil. I reached out to push the strands aside. My fingers brushed something cold. I froze. The strands parted on their own, sliding across my skin like brushing past hair underwater. Behind them stood a figure. For a moment, my mind refused to comprehend what I was seeing. It was me. I stared into a face identical to mine. Same hair, same eyes, same faint scar on the eyebrow. But the skin was pale as parchment, and the eyes glowed faint red, swirling slightly like diluted blood. My double tilted its head. The motion was jerky, puppet-like. "You're late," it said in my voice. "What are you?" I whispered. It smiled. The expression didn't touch its eyes. "An echo," it said. "A path you might have walked." I stepped back reflexively. The echo stepped forward. "This place weaves destinies," it continued. "Every choice is a thread, every fear, a knot, every regret, a pattern." "I'm not part of your pattern," I said, though the tremor in my voice betrayed me. The echo's smile widened unnaturally. "Aren't you? You came here following a pull you don't understand. That pull is a thread, and you're tangled tighter than you know." I shook my head. "I just want to leave." The echo moved closer, its movements smoother now, more human. "There is no leaving," it said, "only unraveling." A thread extended from its fingertip. A thin, glowing strand that reached toward me like a probing tentacle. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a thick cord on the floor. The echo stepped fully into the glow. I saw then that its feet weren't touching the ground. It hung suspended by dozens of threads piercing through its back, arms, and legs as though it were a marionette. "You're not real," I whispered. The echo's head snapped to the side, the motion sharp enough that I heard a crack. "Real?" it said. "Everything here is real. That is the curse of the labyrinth. It shows you what you could have been, what you still might be, and what you can never escape." More threads shot forward, wrapping around its arms and pulling it backward as if the labyrinth had grown impatient. The echo didn't resist. Its eyes stayed fixed on me even as it was drawn into the shifting walls. Its last words slipped into my ear like a cold breath. "You should never have followed the hum." The walls closed around it with a soft, final whisper. I ran. I didn't look back. The tunnel bent sharply, then spiraled downward. My legs screamed in protest, but I kept going, driven by something primal and terrified. The hum grew louder and deeper, as if I were descending into the core of a massive machine. Finally, the tunnel opened. I stumbled into another chamber, this one far larger than the last. The ceiling disappeared into a dark void above, and the floor was covered in a lattice of thick, glowing threads forming patterns so intricate they made my head pound. At the center of the chamber stood a woman. The same woman who had told me the threads were calling me. She wasn't wet anymore. She wasn't trembling. She stood tall, strong, her back straight and her eyes glowing faintly red. "You're finally here," she said. I stopped dead in my tracks. "You?" I whispered. She nodded once. "The labyrinth chose you." "For what?" "To decide." Her smile was sad, almost pitying. "Every path in your life has led you here. Now you must choose which thread to follow." "I don't want any of this," I said. She stepped aside. Behind her, a vast wall of threads shifted, opening like a curtain to reveal dozens of pathways, each one glowing with a different shade of red. "Choice," she murmured, "isn't about want. It's about consequence." I stared at the paths. None of them felt safe. None of them felt right. She extended a hand. "Choose, or the labyrinth will choose for you." My pulse thundered in my ears, and somewhere deep behind me, I heard footsteps. Barefoot, small, the child. He was coming, and I didn't know if he was still human. I didn't turn around. The soft, pattering footsteps behind me grew clearer, the rhythm unsettling. Too slow for a child, too deliberate for a harmless creature. The woman watched me silently, her eyes never leaving mine, as if waiting to see which terrified impulse would take over first. Choosing a path felt like stepping into a contract written in a language I didn't understand. Turning to face the approaching child felt worse. The footsteps stopped. A long breath, too cold to be human, brushed the back of my neck. I forced my voice out, barely above a whisper. "What happens if I don't choose?" The woman's expression didn't change. "Then your thread will be cut." A soft giggle echoed behind me, wet, distorted, as though bubbling through water. I spun around. The child stood less than 3 feet away. He was taller now. His limbs were longer, stretched subtly in ways that made my stomach twist. Red threads pulsed beneath his pale skin like veins that didn't belong there. His eyes glowed brighter, 2 small embers burning in the hollow of his face. "You keep running," he whispered, tilting his head. "Running won't change the path." He took a step toward me. The ground beneath his feet vibrated, threads converging around his ankles like pets greeting their master. The woman behind me spoke calmly, as though discussing the weather. "He's an unraveled. Each labyrinth births its own guide and its own warning." "I don't want either," I snapped, taking a step back. The child grinned, revealing small, sharp teeth. "You don't get to want." I stumbled toward the wall of threads, toward any path, any route that would put distance between us. But when I reached the first glowing pathway, red strands slid out like tendrils, brushing my arms and face, tasting me. The sensation was icy and warm at the same time, pricking every nerve. "No," the woman said behind me. "Not that one. It devours the hesitant." I jerked away, heart hammering. The child giggled again, but the sound cracked halfway through, shifting into a guttural gargle. "Which way will you go?" he asked. The woman spoke as though reciting a scripture. There are 3 kinds of threads here: the straight path, the frayed path, and the broken path. She gestured to the glowing wall. The straight paths are destiny as it is, unchanged. You will live the life you were always meant to live. I swallowed. What life is that? Her expression flickered: regret, pity, something darker. Everyone's straight path ends the same, she said softly. Predictable, inescapable. My skin crawled. She moved her hands slightly, pointing to the pathways where the glow flickered like a candle fighting wind. The frayed paths are altered destinies. Difficult, tangled, full of pain, but they offer freedom. Freedom from what? Yourself. I didn't understand. I didn't have time to. And the broken paths? I asked. She hesitated. The child answered instead, voice shrill with joy. The broken paths lead nowhere. They swallow you up. Forever. His eyes shone with a hunger that made bile rise in my throat. I looked at the maze of glowing routes. They rearranged themselves as I watched, twisting like intestines, pulses of light running through them like breaths. The labyrinth won't let you stand still, the woman warned. She was right. The ground shook. The threads beneath my feet vibrated violently. Red strands shot up from the floor around me, forming a cage that slowly, inexorably tightened. The labyrinth was forcing me to move. I chose the only thing my panicked mind could grasp: a dim path on the far left whose glow pulsed in uneven, broken beats. The moment I stepped toward it, the red cage loosened slightly. It approved. Behind me, the child hissed, "No, not that one." His voice lost its mocking tone. It sounded frightened. "Not that one. Not that one." That was what convinced me. Anything that terrified him was a direction worth taking. I stepped onto the dim, flickering thread path. The woman inhaled sharply. "That is a frayed path," she said. "One of the darkest." The child backed away rapidly, threads curling around his legs as if trying to pull him to safety. "You shouldn't go there," he whispered. I ignored them both. The threads beneath my feet shifted instantly, pulling me forward with a force that nearly made me fall. I stumbled, caught myself, and kept going, driven by raw instinct. The woman's voice followed me, growing fainter with every step. "Remember, every thread demands a price," the child screamed. Then the path sealed behind me, threads weaving together like a mouth closing. I was alone again. The air changed as soon as the labyrinth isolated me. It grew colder, heavier, as though I had stepped underwater. The path ahead was narrow and twisted. With the red glow so faint, I had to drag my fingers along the wall to stay oriented. For minutes, maybe hours, I walked. At one point, the tunnel opened into a small alcove. A single object sat in the middle of it. A chair. Old, wooden, familiar. Too familiar. I froze. It was my father's chair. The one from our old living room. The one he sat in the night he told me he wasn't coming back. My chest tightened painfully.
No, he whispered.
"You don't get to use this." But the labyrinth didn't care what I wanted. The chair creaked softly, as if inviting me to sit. I stepped backward. Threads dropped from the ceiling like puppeteer strings, wrapping loosely around the chair as though caressing it. A voice seeped through the air, low and rough. "You never asked me why." My heart stopped. The voice was my father's. I spun around, but the tunnel behind me was empty. The voice was coming from the chair. "Stop it," I whispered. "Stop using his voice." The chair creaked again. "You pushed me away," the voice murmured. "That night. You didn't call after me." Sweat prickled across my skin. "That wasn't my fault," I said. "You left." "Did I?" The voice shifted, deepened, twisted. "Or did you choose a thread that cut us apart?"
No, he whispered.
"You were always going to end up here," it continued. "The day I walked out, the labyrinth marked you. You felt the hum even then, didn't you?" My hands trembled, because he was right. I remembered it now. The faint vibration under my feet as I stood in the doorway, watching his silhouette fade into the night. I thought it was just adrenaline, a trick of the nerves. But it was the same hum I'd felt under the city. The same pull. Destiny had been weaving me in its web long before I knew it existed. "I'm not listening to you," I said, stepping away from the alcove. The voice laughed. A cold, broken laugh that didn't belong to any version of my father. "You can't outrun threads already tied around your throat." I turned and ran. The path curved sharply, twisting around itself like a coiled serpent. The darkness thickened until I could barely see my hands. My breaths came in ragged gasps. Finally, the tunnel ended. I stumbled into a new chamber. This one had no threads hanging, no glowing walls. Instead, the ground was covered in ash, thick enough to coat my boots. The air smelled burnt, metallic, heavy. At the center of the chamber lay something half-buried. A photograph. I crouched, brushing ash away from its surface. The breath left my lungs. It was a picture of me years younger, standing in front of the archives. But behind me, barely visible, was a red thread wrapped around my ankle. The date on the photo was from a day I didn't remember feeling anything unusual. But the labyrinth remembered. It had been marking me for years. Footsteps crunched behind me. I didn't look up. A voice, soft and calm, spoke just above a whisper. "You're beginning to see." My blood froze. It was the woman's voice. But when I stood and turned, it wasn't the woman. It was someone else. Someone I knew. Someone I had buried 3 years ago. My breath caught in my throat. She stood only a few feet away, her outline shimmering faintly in the dim glow of the ash-covered chamber. Her hair was the same raven black it had been in life, falling in soft curls around her shoulders. Her eyes were the same deep brown I used to get lost in, warm, steady, grounding. Except now they weren't warm. They glowed with a faint red shimmer, like embers cooling at the end of a fire. "Sarah," I whispered. Her name tasted like dust on my tongue. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. She only tilted her head slightly, as though trying to understand me. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she murmured. Her voice, God, her voice, was exactly as I remembered it. Quiet, gentle, the sound that used to calm me down when I couldn't breathe. But she wasn't breathing now. Her chest barely moved. She took a step toward me. I stepped back. "Sarah is dead," I said, forcing the words out even as my throat tightened. "You can't be her." She paused. A faint crackle of red light flickered under her skin, like a pulse running through threads beneath her flesh. "Death doesn't end threads," she said. "It only cuts them loose." I shook my head. "You're not her. You're just another echo." She smiled then. Not her smile. Never her smile. This one was too wide. Too brittle. Like someone imitating an expression they'd only seen in pictures. "Why do you run from memories you created?" she asked softly. "You brought me here."
No, iwisparat.
"The labyrinth did." She closed the distance between us in 2 slow steps. Close enough now that I could smell her. Except there was no warmth, no scent of the perfume she always wore. There was only cold air and the metallic tang of the threads. "Do you remember the last thing you said to me?" she asked. My stomach twisted. Of course I remembered. "You're pushing me away, Sarah. I can't do this anymore." It was the last fight before she walked out into the night and crossed that cursed intersection. A drunk driver didn't see her in time. She died a stranger's death while I sat alone, replaying my own words like a wound I had carved open. "I didn't mean it," I said hoarsely. "You know I didn't." Sarah's face softened, and for a terrifying moment, she looked exactly like herself again. "I know," she whispered. Relief surged painfully through me. Too painfully. Then her expression shifted. Twist, stretch, crack. As if something underneath her skin was moving. "But that doesn't matter now," she said, voice changing, warping. "The thread of your guilt is the one the labyrinth feeds on." The glow in her eyes brightened to an unnatural crimson. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stepped back. She stepped forward. "You came here because you wanted to change something," she said. "Fix something. Isn't that right?"
No, primelit.
Her smile returned, slow, knowing. "Yes," she said. "You want to rewrite the past. Undo the threads you regret. I swallowed hard. Even if I did, that's impossible. Not here, she whispered. A shiver crept down my spine. What are you talking about? She lifted a hand. Red threads slithered from her fingertips, curling through the air toward me like smoke. The frayed paths allow change. Painful change. Dangerous change. But change all the same. The threads wrapped lightly around my wrist without touching me, hovering just above my skin like they were waiting. Come with me, she said. I'll show you. No, her eyes narrowed. You still don't understand, do you? The labyrinth brought you here because you can't move forward until you unravel what keeps you tied to the past. I pulled my arm away. You're not Sarah, I said. You're just wearing her face. She stared at me with empty disappointment. Then why does your thread pull toward me? She whispered. Before I could answer, before I could run, the chamber trembled violently. The ash on the ground swirled into spirals, rising into the air like smoke. Threads shot from the walls and ceiling, weaving themselves rapidly in frantic motions. Sarah's head snapped toward the far end of the chamber, her expression tightening. He's coming, she said. My blood froze. Who? She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped back, graceful and silent, and began to dissolve into strands of red thread, unraveling from the inside out. Her eyes were the last thing to disappear, the red glow fading as the threads scattered into the air like embers. Then she was gone. The ash settled. Silence returned. And out of the far tunnel came a sound I recognized with sickening clarity. Dragging footsteps. But not soft like the child's earlier. Not light like Sarah's illusion. These footsteps were heavy.
Vet.
Uneven. Something large was approaching. I backed away instinctively until my shoulders pressed against the rough wall. The glow at the tunnel's mouth grew brighter, pulsing, swelling, almost throbbing. Then a shape emerged. At first it looked like a shadow. Then the glow revealed it. It was a man, or at least it had been. His body dragged behind him in broken angles, limbs bent as if forcibly rearranged. Red threads punched through his skin like wires through clay. His eyes were hollow sockets filled with swirling crimson light. He crawled rather than walked, pulling himself forward with claw-like hands wrapped tightly in thread. My stomach lurched. It was him, my father, or what was left of him. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He opened his ruined mouth. Son! The voice crawled across the walls like something rotting. I stumbled backward. No, 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 this is not real. He dragged himself closer, threads snapping and tightening with every movement. You failed me, he rasped. You let me leave. You let me die alone. My heart pounded against my ribs like it wanted to escape. You're not my father, I whispered. My father is dead, he growled. Everything dead becomes woven. Everything broken becomes mine. He lifted his head, and the light inside his eye sockets blazed. The labyrinth feeds on you, son, and I am what it has made from your emptiness. He lunged. I turned and ran. The chamber behind me collapsed into chaos. Threads whipping through the air, ash flying in violent spirals, the ground vibrating like a heartbeat on the verge of exploding. The tunnel ahead warped as I sprinted into it, twisting violently, walls bending inward like a throat ready to swallow. I ran until the world blurred. Then suddenly the ground disappeared. From beneath my feet, I tumbled down a steep, spiraling chute, bouncing painfully against walls of woven fiber. Red light flickered around me like lightning. Couldn't scream. The air was gone. Everything vanished in a blur of glowing red threads. Then, suddenly, I stopped. I crashed onto a solid floor with enough force to knock the air from my lungs. Took several seconds before I could breathe again. When I finally opened my eyes, the world was still spinning. But I saw something that froze the breath in my chest completely. A door, standing alone in the middle of a circular chamber. A normal door, wood, brass handle, paint peeling. I knew this door. I had walked through it my entire childhood. It was the door to my old bedroom. Before I could move or think or run, the handle turned. Slowly, deliberately, and the door began to open. I didn't sleep that night. The smoke pressed against the windows like a living thing, as if it were waiting for me to dream so it could slip inside and take my shape. I sat on the floor with my back to the door, knees tucked to my chest, listening to the strange little creaks the house made. Each one sounded like footsteps. Each one made me tighten my grip on the flashlight until my knuckles throbbed. Near dawn, there was a soft scratching at the door. I froze. It wasn't frantic or animalistic. It was gentle, slow, deliberate, like someone dragging their fingernails lightly over the wood, trying to get my attention. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then a voice whispered through the bottom crack of the door. "Are you awake, Mira?" My heartbeat stopped so suddenly I thought I might faint. The voice was my mother's. Soft, light, lilting the way it used to sound when she woke me up for school. But my mother had been dead for 6 years. I had watched the villagers gather around the crater's edge as her silhouette walked away into the swirling gray, dissolving into vapor before she ever reached the center. I didn't answer. The voice at the door didn't seem to mind my silence. It whispered again, with a fragile tremor that almost tricked me into believing. "Let me in, sweetheart. It's cold out here." The flashlight trembled in my hands. That was exactly what she used to say, word for word. A phrase that belonged to my childhood and to no one else. No one in the village knew it. The smoke figure at my door wasn't mimicking her in a general way. It remembered details. It remembered me. It had learned. Something tapped once on the door, soft, rhythmic. A knuckle. "Please, I came back for you." My eyes burned with tears. Not from hope, from terror. There was something so horribly wrong about hearing a dead woman play at being alive. I pressed my forehead to my knees and forced myself to breathe, slow and quiet. The tapping stopped. "Mira," the voice whispered. "I know you're in there. I can smell your fear." Cold snapped down my spine. I scrambled backwards so fast I hit my shoulder on the wall, pain flaring. The doorknob twitched, turned a millimeter, then stopped again. I clamped both hands over my mouth. The voice outside seemed to lean closer. "You can't hide forever. We all come out eventually." A moment later, the footsteps faded. The silhouette drifted past the window, then disappeared into the thick, roiling smoke. When I was finally able to peel myself off the wall, the sun had begun to rise. But dawn didn't chase away the smoke. It only illuminated it, making the swirling shapes clearer, sharper, almost solid. By the time I stepped outside, the streets were filled with villagers. Nervous whispers moved through the crowd as figures formed in the fog, slipping between houses like memories given flesh. I found Ithar near the well, looking pale and shaken. He didn't notice me approach. "What did you see last night?" I asked quietly. He flinched as if struck. When he saw it was me, he exhaled sharply. "My brother." Except it wasn't him. Mine was my mother. He swallowed, eyes glinting with something like grief twisted into fear. "They're getting stronger," he murmured. "Last year they barely had faces. Last month they learned to walk like us. Now they speak." "We need to leave," I whispered. His expression darkened. "There's nowhere to go. The crater walls are too steep. The world outside is gone. We're trapped." He wasn't wrong. But something inside me, some part formed from last night's terror, refused to accept that. I lowered my voice. "There might be a way." He looked at me sharply. "What are you talking about?" "I've been studying the old journals in the archive. The first villagers who settled here. They wrote about a path out. A tunnel." "That's just a story," he said.
No.
"It's real. Or it was. The smoke creatures. They're changing. Maybe the crater is changing too." Ithar stared at me, searching my face for fear, for desperation. He found both. "You want to go into the smoke center," he said slowly, "where the figures are born." I nodded. "If we understand what they are, maybe we can destroy them. Maybe we can escape." He let out a breath that was half a laugh, half a tremor. "Mira, that place is death. Staying here is death too." Before he could argue, a woman screamed from across the village square. All heads snapped toward the sound. A little girl stood in the street, staring at something forming in the smoke before her. Something tall and skeletal, its limbs stretching thin like a shadow pulled too far. Ithar grabbed my hand. I didn't tell him to let go. The figure turned its head, if that long shape could be called a head, and looked at us with eyes made of swirling void. My legs weakened, but I stayed upright, because for the first time, beneath the terror, I felt something else. A pull, as if the smoke itself was aware of me, calling me, expecting me. I stepped forward, and everything in the smoke shifted toward me at once. Ithar yanked me backward so hard my shoulder nearly popped. "What are you doing?" he hissed. The smoke creature's head tilted, the swirling black inside its eyes tightening like coiled storms. I could feel it looking through me, not at me, as if it were peeling apart the layers of my thoughts, searching for something, recognition, maybe, or possession. The little girl whimpered. Her fingers clutched the hem of her dress, twisting the fabric until her knuckles turned white. The creature leaned toward her, joints cracking like branches under frost. Ithar moved first. Before I could think to stop him, he darted forward, snatched the girl into his arms, and ran. The creature's jolted, stuttering movement followed a heartbeat later, its elongated limbs snapping backward and then forward again as it lurched after him. I acted without thinking. My legs propelled me toward the well, toward the cluster of villagers who were too petrified to move. "Scatter!" I shouted. No one did. Fear in the cradle always froze people before it saved them. The creature tore through the smoke, its shape unraveling and reweaving as it gained speed. Ithar sprinted past me, gasping, the child crying against his shoulder. The creature's arm extended, too far, too fast, and the fingertips lengthened into thin, needle-like points. They were inches from Ithar's back. I grabbed a lantern from a nearby post and hurled it at the creature. Glass shattered against its body. Oil splattered across its torso. The flame inside died instantly, as if suffocated. But the creature reacted or recoiled. Its body flickered, edges fraying like a flame caught in wind, turned its face toward me. Then it stopped chasing Ithar, took a step toward me instead. The villagers finally burst apart in panic, scattering in every direction. The smoke swallowed them one by one. I stood my ground, because something in the creature's gaze told me the truth I had been trying not to accept. They weren't hunting us at random. They were hunting me. The creature's form pulsed, expanding and collapsing. The faint outline of a mouth opened, but the sound that spilled out wasn't a voice. It was a chorus. Hundreds of overlapping whispers, as if the entire crater were exhaling through it. "Mira." My name drifted from its throat like a memory decaying. I stepped back. My heel hit the edge of the well. My balance wavered. The creature surged forward. Hands grabbed my arms. Ithar again, he had come back. "Move!" he shouted, shoving me away from the well. The creature lunged at the same moment I fell sideways, its needle fingers slicing the air where my face had been. It overshot, its long body swinging in a grotesque arc. But it didn't fall into the well. Caught itself, regained form, straightened, and then the smoke around it began to ripple. Not like wind, like hunger. Dozens of shapes materialized, faces half-formed, bodies wreathed in curling gray tendrils, each one staring at us, each one wearing the faint suggestion of a person I once knew. One of them, right in front, held my mother's smile. My vision blurred for a moment. Pain twisted through my chest. Ithar's hand found mine again. "We need to run," he breathed. But I didn't move, because somewhere behind the fear, behind the pain, was a certainty that terrified me more than anything else. They weren't chasing the villagers. They weren't chasing Ithar. They were gathering around me, claiming me, as if I belonged to them. "Mira?" 100 voices sighed at once. "Come home!" The smoke folded inward and swallowed the village square. Ithar pulled me into a sprint, our feet hitting the packed earth with frantic, uneven thuds. Shapes lunged, hands of vapor stretched out, faces flickered into existence inches from mine. We ran. down the alley beside the baker's house, past the old shrine, toward the narrow path that led to my home. But as we reached the door, I already knew. I couldn't hide. Not anymore. They knew exactly where to find me. And I could feel something else too. Something deeper, like a thread buried beneath my ribs, pulling me toward the center of the crater, toward the place where the smoke was born. Mira, Ithar rasped, pushing me through the doorway and slamming it shut behind us. What did you do to them? I shook my head. Nothing. I don't know why they want me. He stared at me with a hollow expression. Yes, he said quietly. You do. Before I could answer, a shadow passed the window. Then another, and another. The smoke had come for us. The house groaned as if something enormous pressed against its outer walls. Smoke slid under the doorframe in thin, eager tendrils, curling across the floor like living veins. Ithar grabbed a cloth and shoved it into the crack, but the smoke simply seeped through the fibers, ignoring barriers the way a dream ignores logic. My breath hitched. They weren't just outside. They were already here. Ithar backed away, eyes locked on the door. There's no stopping it, he whispered. It wants you. It, I said, though I already knew there was no it. There were many. A chorus of whispers slithered through the room, rising from the smoke on the floorboards. Mira? The way the sound shaped itself, like it had been practicing my name for years, sent a tremor through my spine. Ithar grabbed my wrist. We need to go. We need to get to the upper ridge. No, the word came out before I understood why. Ithar froze. What do you mean, no? I can't outrun them. You don't know that. I do, I said quietly. I didn't understand how, but the truth pulsed inside me. Ithar's face twisted with something between fear and anger. Then what do you want to do, Mira? Stay here and let them take you. The smoke rose higher. A hand formed from it, fingers stretching toward my ankle like roots reaching through soil. I jerked back. No, I said. I need to go to the crater. Ithar recoiled. Are you insane? That's where the smoke is strongest. Exactly. He stared at me, realization dawning. And with it, horror. You think it wants to take you there. And I did. Every instinct inside me, every instinct I wished I didn't have, was pointed toward the center of the crater. Toward the swirling gray abyss where the smoke was thickest, where the oldest whispers came from, where lost faces lingered longest before dissolving. My mother's face had appeared more clearly there than anywhere else. Her last moments were tangled in the smoke's breath. Whenever I closed my eyes, I still saw her silhouette vanishing into the haze, reaching out for me. Mira. Ithar stepped closer, voice shaking. You can't go down there. No one returns when they descend too far. Not your mother. Not the others. I know. So why would you even think about? Because I need answers. He stared at me, and for a moment he looked impossibly young, impossibly fragile. The boy I had grown up with, not the man trying to shield me from the world unraveling around us. But the answers might kill you, he whispered. Then I'll die knowing. Ithar let out a breath that sounded like defeat, or devotion. The floor trembled beneath us. Something slammed against the house, hard enough to rattle the windows, hard enough to make dust sift down from the rafters. The lights flickered. He swore. We don't have time for this. The smoke that had been creeping along the floor surged suddenly upward, forming a torso, a head, a pair of luminous eyes. My name rippled from its throat. Ithar acted instantly. He grabbed a clay oil lamp from the table and hurled it at the creature. Unlike the lantern in the village square, this one was still burning. The flames stretched through the air, bright and wild. But as soon as the fire connected with the creature's smoky form, it disappeared. Not dissolved, not burned. It simply stepped backward into nothingness, folding into the air as though slipping behind an invisible curtain. That's new, Ithar said through his teeth.
No, iwisparat.
That's old. The creature's disappearance wasn't retreat. It was movement. It was waiting. Outside, the world had gone silent. Even the wind had stopped breathing. We have to leave now, I said. Ithar nodded with no more arguments left. He slung his pack over one shoulder, grabbed a carved bone knife from the wall, and took my hand. I didn't protest. We pushed out the back door and slipped into the narrow path leading toward the south slope of the crater. Smoke curled between the houses, drifting in slow, deliberate waves. It didn't lash out or chase us. It watched. I felt eyes, thousands of them, in every direction. Faces flickering briefly in the haze. Smiles that weren't smiles. Mouths whispering fragments of words the wind carried away before I could understand them. "I'm going with you to the center," Ithar said.
No, iyan suarat.
He squeezed my hand tighter. "I'm not giving you a choice." A soft sound came from behind us, like a baby exhaling. We turned. A small figure stood alone in the path, smoke pouring from its skin in thin tendrils. It was the little girl from the village square. But she wasn't crying anymore. She was smiling with my mother's smile. "Mira," she said in a voice that was not her own. "Come home." I felt something in my chest crack open. Ithar pulled me behind him, blade raised. But the child, no, the thing inside her, made no move to attack. She only pointed down the slope, toward the heart of the crater, toward where I was meant to go. And then she dissolved, her body melting into the smoke like wax against flame. The path ahead cleared. A sign, a calling, a trap, maybe all three. Ithar looked at me with dread. "We go together." This time I didn't argue, and we began our descent into the place where destinies were swallowed whole. We descended the crater's inner slope in silence. The air thickened with every step, not like fog but like water pressing against our bodies, resisting our movement. My lungs struggled. Each breath felt filtered through a membrane of cold ash. The smoke coiled in the ravines of the path, slipping between our ankles like curious serpents. Ithar stayed close behind me, his hand occasionally brushing my back, as if he feared I'd be pulled away the moment he stopped touching me. Maybe he wasn't wrong. The deeper we went, the less the smoke felt like a presence and more like an environment, an ecosystem capable of thought. Pulsed around my skin, tasting me, recognizing me, welcoming me. That terrified me more than anything else. "Stop," Ithar said suddenly. I turned. He pointed to the ground. There were footprints, bare, human, and recent. The ash was disturbed, smoke curling up from each indentation as though savoring the lingering warmth of whoever had passed. There were dozens of them, some small, some large, some dragging, some skipping. Like a parade of the dead had walked into the crater willingly. "We're close," I murmured. Ithar frowned. "Close to what?" Before I could answer, the smoke thinned for just a moment, like curtains parting. And we saw it. The center. A basin carved by nature or by something older, round as a bloodshot eye. Smoke rose from its depths in slow, spiraling columns. The ground pulsed faintly red beneath it, the way a buried heartbeat might glow through skin. But what drew my eyes wasn't the pit. It was the figures standing around it. Dozens of them. Hundreds, maybe. Not made of smoke. Human. Or human-shaped. Some stood still as statues. Others trembled. All faced the smoking pit, hands lowered at their sides, heads tilted slightly down, as if listening to something beneath the earth. "What are they?" Ithar whispered. I swallowed hard. "People."
No.
"No, they're not. Look at the way they stand. Look at there." One turned its head. Just a fraction. Enough for me to see the hollow where its eyes should have been. My breath caught. The face was familiar. Too familiar. It was Taran, the village herbalist who had gone missing when I was 9. I remembered his laugh, his bright green eyes, his warm hands that smelled of crushed mint. Now his body remained, but his eyes were gone, replaced by empty cavities filled with drifting smoke. And he wasn't alone. Another figure shifted, then another. Faces I recognized. Faces the crater had taken years ago, lifetimes ago. Faces from stories whispered at night. Faces I had tried to forget because remembering hurt too much. All hollow. All empty. Ithar's voice trembled. "Mira, we need to go back. We can't be here. We can't." "I have to."
No.
You don't understand. He grabbed my shoulders. These people, they're not alive. And they're not dead. They're waiting. For something. Maybe for you. As if in response, the figures slowly raised their heads. All of them. Hundreds of hollow faces turning toward me in a single, silent motion. It was the most horrifying, unnatural thing I had ever seen. Ithar stepped in front of me, knife drawn, breath shaky. The figures didn't move closer. They simply stared. And then, a sound rose from the pit. Not a whisper. A voice. No, many voices speaking in perfect unison. Mira. The ground trembled under my feet. The smoke thickened until I could barely see Ithar. Mira. The voices repeated, echoing up the crater walls. Child of the wreath. Come. My knees buckled. Something inside my chest vibrated, as if the sound were resonating with my bones. What do they mean? Ithar demanded. What's a child of the wreath? I opened my mouth, but the answer wasn't in words. It was in memory, a memory I didn't know I had. A woman screaming, a cradle of smoke swirling around her feet. A voice, my mother's voice, whispering something urgent to someone I could not see. Protect her. Hide her. They must never. The memory snapped like a frayed thread. I gasped, nearly collapsing. Ithar caught me. Mira? Mira. Stay with me. But I couldn't speak, because something was rising from the pit. A shape. No, a mess. A writhing cluster of smoke and limbs and faces, all merging into one shifting form. Eyes blinked open across its surface, hundreds of them. Some human, some not. The hollow people around the pit knelt. The ground surged with heat. Ithar dragged me backward, but my legs wouldn't obey. Every inch of me was pulled toward the center, toward the ancient, monstrous thing that was calling me. Spoke again. Come home, Mira. My heart froze, because the next words were not a command. They were truth. You were born here. The words struck me like a physical blow. Born here. The crater tilted beneath me. The smoke thickening. The hollow people bowing lower as if the revelation was some sacred ritual that had waited years to be spoken aloud. I wasn't born here, I whispered. But even as I said it, the statement felt thin, fragile, wrong. You were born here. The smoke around my feet curled upward like vines, brushing my ankles, climbing slowly, not attacking, welcoming. Ithar shook me. Mira, look at me. But I couldn't. My gaze was fixed on the colossal form rising from the pit. Its shifting surface resolved, moment by moment, into faces. Faces I recognized. Faces I loved. Faces I feared. My mother's face flickered across it and vanished. Replaced by a stranger's, replaced by a child's, replaced by something with jaws too wide to be human. Every face spoke with the same voice. Our daughter returns. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over stones jutting from the ground. No, I whispered. No, I'm human. I lived in the village. My mother, your mother, the voices murmured, stole you. The pit throbbed with heat. Stole. The word sank into my skin. Ithar stepped in front of me again, knife shaking in his hand. You're lying. The mass of smoke and faces tilted, as though amused. We do not lie. We remember. More figures rose from the pit, smaller, thinner, like tendrils shaped into human outlines. Their movements were fluid, boneless, flowing up the crater walls and joining the circle of hollow people. Whispers rippled through them like wind through grass. Daughter, returned, chosen. My stomach twisted. My mother wasn't. She wasn't like you, I said. She was flesh, blood, human. Yes, the pit creature agreed. And she loved you. The words were soft, gentle, terrifying. But she feared the wreath, feared what you were meant to be. She carried you from our heart before you had fully formed. Before you had chosen your shape. Chosen my shape? Ithar gripped my wrist so tightly I felt the bones grind. Don't listen to them. But I already had. Because another memory surfaced, clearer this time. Smoke swirling above a cradle. Hands, too large to be human, lifting me. A voice whispering, she will bridge us. She will bind the wreath. My mother screaming, "Give her back!" Then darkness. My knees buckled. Ithar held me upright by force alone. Mira, look at me. They're putting images in your head. They're manipulating you. You didn't come from them. But the pit creature spoke again, drowning out his words. Child of both worlds, born of smoke, raised of flesh. The hollow figures echoed it like a prayer. Born of smoke, raised of flesh. The ground under us cracked. A circle of glowing red light flared around the pit, then spread outward along the crater floor like veins, like threads binding everything together. The smoke recoiled from the light. No, it wasn't recoiling. It was bowing. The red glow pulsed again, and something deep in my chest pulsed with it. I pressed a hand to my heart and felt not a beat, but a vibration, a resonance. Ithar's face went white. What is that? I swallowed. I don't know. I did know, but I couldn't accept it. The pit creature extended a limb, or many limbs merged into one. Its shape reached toward me, a towering silhouette of faces and shifting limbs and unfathomable smoke. Mira, come. My feet moved forward. Not willingly, not unwillingly. Ithar grabbed me. Stop. Mira, stop. I stopped. For him. But the red glow intensified, like blood roaring through arteries. The crater floor trembled. The hollow people rose to their feet and lifted their heads. The smoke around them thickened. Mira, the creature said again, but now its voice was softer, coaxing. We do not wish to harm you. We wish to give you what was denied. Your home. Your purpose. The word purpose twisted through me, sharp as a hook. My breath came shallow. What purpose? I managed. The creature leaned toward me. His many mouths smiled. To command us. To bind us. To be the heart of the wreath. Ithar stepped between us again. She won't be part of you. The creature regarded him with something like amusement. She already is. Smoke coiled around my legs, climbing higher, reaching for my waist now. Not burning, not strangling, claiming. My heartbeat or whatever pulsed inside me, synchronized with the red glow beneath the crater. Each throb pulled me a fraction closer. Ithar's voice was panicked. Mira, fight it. I whispered, though I wasn't sure I was, because another memory surfaced, unbidden. My mother holding me, running through the village paths, the smoke chasing her, reaching for me, her tears falling on my face, her voice whispering, forgive me, you should have belonged to them. I staggered. The pit creature extended arms of smoke toward me. Come home. The word home shattered something inside me. Ithar saw it. No, he said, more desperately than before. Mira, listen to me, you don't belong to them. You belong with me, with your village, with the life you built. The wind rose suddenly, swirling the smoke in violent spirals. The creature's voice darkened. She belongs to us. Ithar raised the knife, and the entire crater held its breath. The crater trembled. Ithar's knife glinted in the red glow pulsing beneath our feet, his hand shaking but his stance unbroken. He held himself between me and the impossible thing rising from the pit, as if his small human frame could stop an ancient force made of every lost soul in the crater's history. Mira, he said, breath ragged. Don't move. Whatever it's doing, fight it. I'm trying, I whispered, but the truth was heavier. Some part of me wasn't trying hard enough. The smoke curled up my waist, my ribs, my back. Each tendril carried a warmth, a familiarity I hated myself for recognizing. Home. The word pulsed inside me like a second heartbeat. The creature, this monstrosity of faces and limbs and whispering voices, lowered itself, its enormous mass collapsing gracefully like a curtain folding. We have waited, it murmured, for so long, for you to return to the womb from which you were taken. Ithar bared his teeth. You're not taking her anywhere. The creature shifted, faces turning toward him, then toward me. We do not take what is already ours. Ithar lunged. He didn't hesitate, not for a heartbeat. The knife flashed through the smoke, through the red glow, aimed at the nearest solid-looking part of the creature's form. It didn't connect. Before the blade reached its target, a tendril of smoke shot upward, wrapped around his wrist, and lifted him off the ground as easily as plucking a flower. He cried out, the knife falling from his grip and clattering on the rocks below. "Ithar!" I screamed. I surged forward, or tried to. The smoke binding my legs tightened, pulling me back, anchoring me to the ground. "Mira," the creature said, "if you wish him unharmed, do not struggle." I froze. Ithar dangled several feet above the earth, suspended by a coil of smoke that wrapped his wrist so tightly I saw blood trickle down his arm. "Mira," he gasped, "don't listen. You're not theirs. You're—" His voice cut off when the tendril squeezed harder. I felt something inside me snap. "Stop!" The smoke around Ithar's wrist pulsed, then loosened slightly. The creature's many faces smiled at me. "You see?" it murmured. "You command us already, without understanding how." "I didn't command anything," I said, but the tremor in my voice betrayed me. "Your voice shapes us. Your will binds us. Child of the wreath. You were born to rule what your mother feared." "I'm not your child," I whispered. "You are not hers," it replied. "My mother raised me." The smoke shivered at the emotion in my voice. "She protected me. She kept me alive. She stole you." The creature's tone hardened, dozens of faces tightening in unison. "She tore you from the wreath's womb. She fled with you in her arms while the pit still pulsed with your unformed selves. She denied you your destiny." I shook my head violently. "You're lying. You're trying to make me doubt." A memory slammed into me. Not one I lived, one I inherited. My mother running through heavy smoke, her hair wild, her breath ragged. She clutched a bundle against her chest, me, tiny, wailing, wrapped in a cloth already damp with the smoke's strange warmth. Behind her, shapes rose. Tendrils of smoke reached. Voices echoed, "Bring her back." My mother turned once, tears streaking through the ash on her face. "Not my child," she rasped. "Not anymore." The smoke surged. A tendril struck her side. She screamed but ran faster. The memory shattered. I fell to my knees. Ithar shouted my name, but the crater swallowed his voice. The pit creature leaned closer, its enormous face, or the cluster of faces pretending to be a face, lowering until it hovered inches from mine. "Do you understand now?" it whispered. "You were never meant to belong to the fleshborn. Your mother loved you, yes, but love is selfish. She sought to keep what was not hers." "I'm not," I choked. "I'm not one of you." The creature smiled with 100 mouths. "You are both." The smoke pulled tighter around me. Ithar tried to twist free, his voice raw. "Mira, don't let it get inside your head. Please listen to me. You belong with us. With me." The crater shook again. The smoke around Ithar's wrist twisted. He gasped, this time in pain sharp enough that his whole body convulsed. "Stop!" I screamed. The smoke froze instantly. Silence fell. Even the wind halted. The creature's faces tilted, as though assessing me with sudden interest. "You bind us," it whispered, almost reverent, "even untrained, even weakened by the fleshborn life your mother forced upon you." I stood slowly. The smoke that had wrapped my legs loosened. Not fully, but enough for me to breathe, enough for me to feel something terrifying rising inside me. Strength, awareness, resonance. The red glow beneath my feet throbbed with my heartbeat. The hollow people stepped closer, not threatening, awaiting, worshipping. "Mira," Ithar rasped. Don't let them make you into something you're not." His voice cracked on the last word. Something in me cracked with it. "I'm not leaving him," I said. The creature's eyes, hundreds of them, blinked. "We do not ask you to leave him, only to take your place." "What place?" I whispered. The pit creature extended a hand made of swirling smoke, softer this time, almost tender. "At our center," it murmured. "At the heart of the wreath. As our sovereign." Ithar shook his head violently. "Mira,
No.
No, you'll lose yourself. That isn't a throne. It's a cage. The creature ignored him. Mira, daughter, return to your home, and let the wreath rise again. The red glow brightened, matching the pulse inside my chest, and the smoke surged upward in a spiraling column around me. I felt myself lifted off the ground, weightless, suspended, drawn toward the pit, toward the truth, toward my origin, towards becoming something not human, and not entirely monstrous. Ithar screamed my name, and I was pulled into the heart of the smoke. I don't know how long I hung there, suspended in that trembling red web, before the pressure finally released. I dropped to the floor in a heap, the threads retracting like they'd grown bored of me. My skin smoldered where they had touched it, long welts glowing faintly beneath the surface like someone had stitched lines of fire into me. I forced myself upright. My legs shook violently, but at least they held. The corridor ahead had changed again. Narrower now, with threads woven thicker on the walls, pulsing like veins feeding blood to some sleeping colossus. The air tasted metallic, and each breath scraped my throat. I stepped forward. The floor throbbed once, sharply, as though acknowledging my movement. That was when I saw the footprints. Not mine, these were too large, too deep, almost charred into the ground. They led forward, then veered suddenly into a side passage so thin it looked like a wound carved into the corridor. I knew I should continue straight. Every part of me screamed that veering off the main path was suicide. But something about those footprints, something about the weight of them, how the threads recoiled from where they sank in the floor, I followed. The side passage was suffocatingly tight. The threads brushed my shoulders and hips, humming with a fevered rhythm that made my heart stutter to match it. I could feel the labyrinth adjusting around me, turning, narrowing, breathing. The footprints deepened. I turned a final corner and froze. The corridor dead-ended into a small chamber. The footprints stopped at its center. And in the middle, suspended above the floor, was a shape made entirely of red threads. Human-shaped, but hollow in the middle, like a person woven loosely and left unfinished. It twitched. The threads composing its arms tightened, vibrating like plucked strings. Slowly, the shape tilted its head, or what should have been its head, toward me. I backed up, instinctively reaching for the wall. The stitched figure extended one arm toward me. Its hand unraveled into long filaments that dragged across the floor like tendrils searching for skin. I stumbled. My heel hit something solid, and I turned, expecting a wall. It wasn't a wall. It was a man, or it had once been a man. He stood absolutely still, his body wrapped tight in red thread from neck to ankle. Not encased, not strangled, sewn. The threads pierced his skin in 100 places, going in and out like a seamstress had stitched him into existence. His eyes, his wide, wet, terrified eyes, were the only part of his face left uncovered. He couldn't speak. His lips were pinned shut by delicate crimson cords. I swallowed hard, stepping away from him. His eyes tracked me. The stitched figure in the center of the room snapped suddenly toward the man, threads tightening, shimmering. Then it lunged. Not at him. At me. I dove sideways. The figure slammed into the wall, its red strands embedding deep into the stone like it was trying to anchor itself. I scrambled to my feet just as it tore itself free and whipped around toward me again. Its threads lashed out. One wrapped around my forearm, searing my skin instantly. I cried out and ripped free, skin tearing open in a long, burning gash. The stitched man tried to move toward me, tried to warn me, but the threads binding him only tightened, pulling his body rigid. The creature lunged again. This time I didn't run. I grabbed one of the hanging strands from the wall and yanked it loose. It resonated like a note of pain. As the creature sprang, I swept the strand across its form. The effect was immediate. The thread hummed violently, and every filament composing the creature vibrated in response. Its limbs buckled, twisting inward as though the note had disrupted whatever held it together. Staggered backward, convulsing, I struck it again. The creature collapsed into a heap, its threads unraveling into lifeless coils that slithered across the floor like dying worms. I stood there panting, shaking, bleeding. The stitched man behind me let out a muffled groan, a sound of pleading. I turned to him. His eyes begged. I stepped closer. He flinched, as though terrified of what I might do. "I'm not here to hurt you," I whispered. My voice felt small in the heavy air. A lie, or the truth? I didn't know anymore. I reached up and touched the threads at his jaw. They pulsed faintly beneath my fingers, warming. He shuddered. I pulled one free. Felt like ripping out a nerve. He gasped behind his sealed mouth, tears streaming from his eyes. One by one, I pulled the threads away, carefully, gently, as though unraveling a shroud. When I finally freed his lips, he sucked in breath after breath like a drowning man surfacing. Help," he rasped. "I've got you," I said. Another lie. I didn't know if I had myself. He sagged forward as the remaining threads loosened, collapsing into my arms. He was trembling violently, like someone waking from a nightmare that had lasted far too long. "Please," he whispered. "Please don't let it take me again." I hesitated only a heartbeat before nodding. But the labyrinth heard him. The glow around us deepened, threads tightening overhead like a warning. The man's face went white. "It knows," he croaked. "It knows you unraveled its servant." I grabbed his arm. "Then we run." He stared at me, disbelief etched into every line of his face. You don't understand. There is no run here. We'll find a path," I insisted. He shook his head, trembling. "Paths are chosen, not by you." He lifted a shaking hand and pointed behind me. I turned. A new corridor had opened, one that hadn't existed a moment ago. Path chosen. And it glowed with a deeper red, a darker red, a red that felt like blood pooling on a cold floor. "We have to go," he whispered, because staying meant being stitched back into silence. And the labyrinth was hungry. We limped into the new corridor, the walls closing behind us with a soft hiss, like a mouth sealing after swallowing. The man's breathing was shallow, each inhale rattling, each exhale trembling. I supported most of his weight as we moved, though I wasn't sure how much longer my own legs would hold. The air here was colder, unnaturally so. The threads lining the walls had lost their glow. They were darker, nearly black, like veins starved of blood. Every vibration felt slower, heavier, as if the labyrinth were thinking, deeply, dangerously. "What's your name?" I asked him, keeping my voice low. He shook his head. "Doesn't matter. It matters to me." He hesitated, then whispered, "Riven, Riven," a name that sounded as fractured as he looked. "What happened to you?" I asked. "Same as what's happening to you," he said, voice thin. "It tests you, chooses you, then it stitches what it needs." "What does it need?" His eyes darted around the corridor. "Everything. Whatever you came here with, your fears, your regrets, your memories. It threads them together until they make something else. Something it wants. And you became one of its echoes," he whispered, shuddering. "Not alive, not dead, just held." We turned a corner. The new corridor opened into a massive chamber, one that dwarfed every space I'd seen so far. The ceiling vanished into darkness, and the floor was a shifting ocean of red threads, writhing like grass in a violent wind even though the air was still. Riven recoiled.
No.
"No, not here." "What is this?" I asked. "The looming grounds," he whispered, "where it rewrites you." Before I could respond, the floor surged beneath us. The threads parted like curtains, revealing a steep downward slope spiraling into the center of the chamber. Riven clutched my arm. "Don't step on it, don't." But I already had. The ground shifted instantly, pulling me forward as if it had been waiting for that single touch. Riven tried to yank me back, but the threads wrapped around our ankles, dragging us down the spiral. We tumbled. The world spun red. My elbows and knees scraped against the writhing strands. Riven screamed once. Then his voice was swallowed by the sound of countless threads vibrating at once, a deafening chorus of metallic whispers. We slid until the spiral dropped us into the center pit. I hit the ground hard. Something snapped in my shoulder, pain shooting like lightning into my chest. Riven landed beside me with a choked gasp. I rolled over, dizzy, vision warped, and then froze. The pit wasn't empty. It was filled with bodies. Human bodies. Hundreds of them, stacked and tangled like discarded. You can replace this text with any text you wish. You can either write in this text box or paste your own text here. Try different languages and voices. Change the speed and the pitch of the voice. You can even tweak the SSML, speech synthesis markup language, to control how the different sections of the text sound. Click on SSML above to give it a try. Enjoy using text-to-speech. I saw myself standing in the city above. Crowded streets, neon signs flickering on wet pavement. The kind of night where the darkness feels heavier than the air. I saw myself descending those maintenance stairs, thinking I'd found an abandoned tunnel, believing it was coincidence, believing I'd gone there of my own will. But now, watching from the outside, I saw them, thin red threads trailing from my shoulders, my wrists, my spine, leading into the dark long before I ever stepped into it. Invisible then, glowing now, binding, guiding. No, I thought, no, that can't be real. The memory twisted in front of me like a reflection in warped glass. The weaver's voice returned. Threads of destiny are woven long before you feel their pull. You came because you were already unraveling. The labyrinth only finished the work you began. The memory snapped apart like brittle twine. Suddenly I was back in the chamber, breath ragged, sweat cold. The weaver withdrew its arm from Riven, leaving him trembling, gagging, jaw sealed tight. Then it turned its full attention to me again. And I understood. It wasn't here to kill me. It was here to remake me. I felt the thread inside my chest begin to split into branching filaments, spreading through my veins like roots. My pulse changed, slower, deeper, no longer entirely my own. "I'm not yours," I managed to whisper. The weaver tilted its faceless head. "You came broken. I only rewrite what is already falling apart."
No, Isa.
"I won't be one of your echoes. You already are." It raised its arms, and every thread in the pit tightened around the bodies of the others. They arched, contorted, glowing bright red like paper lanterns lit from within. Their voices, hundreds of them, rose in a single trembling whisper. Chorus, a plea, a warning, or maybe all three. The weaver stepped closer. Its hands hovered inches from my face. Threads gathered like a storm around its limbs. It was about to finish threading me, finish claiming me, but the labyrinth had made one mistake. It had shown me the threads, and threads could be pulled. I forced my right arm to move, just enough to grab the filament growing from my chest. The weaver froze. Riven's eyes went wide, and I pulled. Agony ripped through my body, but the thread came loose, snapping free in a burst of red sparks. The weaver's entire form spasmed violently. The bodies around us shook as though an electric pulse had crashed through the chamber. The ground buckled. Threads recoiled from the walls like cut veins. For the first time since entering the labyrinth, the weaver stepped back. I didn't run. Not yet. I couldn't. Not until I understood something vital, something hovering at the edge of my mind like a half-formed thought. "Why me?" I asked, voice shaking. "Why did you choose me?" The weaver steadied, its body reforming in smooth, rippling waves. "Because you were the only one who could pull your own thread free. Because the labyrinth does not trap the strong. Tests them. And you are almost finished." "Finished with what?" "Becoming what you were meant to be." His voice was softer now, almost gentle, but no less terrifying. The chamber shuddered again, dust falling from unseen heights as the walls pulsed like living lungs. Riven tugged desperately at my sleeve, begging silently, eyes wild. He wanted to run. He wanted me to run. But the weaver wasn't attacking. Not anymore. It was waiting, watching, as if I had one more choice to make. And whichever path I took now would determine more than just my fate. It would define what the labyrinth would become next. The red threads around the chamber trembled quietly, like strings anticipating the next note of a song. I took a breath and stepped forward. toward the weaver. When I stepped toward the weaver, Riven made a strangled, muffled sound behind me, a desperate plea wrapped in terror. He tried to grab my arm, but his strength had drained. His hand fell uselessly against my side. The weaver didn't move. It simply watched, its faceless head angled in a posture that felt eerily expectant, like a teacher waiting for a student to finally understand the lesson. "I'm not yours," I whispered. My voice shook, but it didn't break. "You are your own," the weaver replied. Not in words, but in that same woven whisper that echoed directly inside my ribs. "And that is what I have been unraveling you toward." "Then why try to stitch me at all?" A ripple passed through its limbs, threads tightening as if drawing breath. Every thread must be tested to know its strength. Every pattern must be torn before it can be rewoven into something true. It raised one long arm, not menacingly, just offering. A strand of glowing red extended from its wrist, hovering inches from my palm. An invitation, a choice. Riven shook his head violently, his eyes begging me not to take it. The bodies in the pit quivered, their threads humming in a low, miserable harmony, as if they, too, remembered choosing, or failing to, but I wasn't them, and whatever was happening to me had already begun long before I reached this place. The weaver wasn't wrong about that. I had come down here broken. I had come down here because the world above felt like a pattern fraying in my hands, no matter how hard I clung to it. Maybe I had been unraveling for years, and maybe the labyrinth only finished what I refused to face. I reached out. My fingers brushed the glowing thread. For a moment, everything stopped. The hum, the tremor, even the breath in my lungs. Then the thread expanded, unraveling, blooming, spreading across my palm and up my arm like liquid fire. But this time it didn't bind. It sank beneath the skin gently, like ink absorbed by paper. Images flooded my vision. Not memories, possible futures. One where I ran now, dragging Riven with me, clawing our way through collapsing hallways while the weaver's echoes hunted us. One where I became another stitched body in the pit, still breathing, still aware, but forgotten. One where I tried to destroy the weaver and was torn apart thread by thread. One where I accepted its gift and became something else. Something more. Something woven into the labyrinth, but not owned by it. A guardian, not a prisoner. A thread that could pull others free. And then, just for a heartbeat, I saw a future where the labyrinth itself changed. Where the red threads dimmed. Where the weaver bowed. Where the pit emptied. Where no more bodies were added. Where the labyrinth no longer needed to test anyone again. I gasped as the visions vanished. Riven stared at me with wide, trembling eyes. I could see the question in them. "What do you see? What are you becoming?" The weaver's body rippled again, threads resonating softly like a lullaby. "Now you understand. The thread you pulled free was never meant to be removed. Only redirected. Only rewritten." My heartbeat finally resumed, but different, calmer, steadier, as if something inside had been realigned. I closed my hand around the glowing thread until it dissolved fully into my skin. The weaver lowered its arm. It did not speak. It didn't need to. I turned to Riven. He flinched, not from fear of me, but fear of what he thought I had chosen to become. I knelt beside him and touched the thread stitching his jaw shut. Pulsed once, resisting. The weaver's presence pressed against me like a silent question. But this time it didn't try to stop me. I pulled the thread free. Riven gasped violently, coughing, clutching his throat as breath returned in ragged bursts. What did you do?" he rasped. I didn't know how to answer, because I wasn't entirely sure myself. But the labyrinth felt different. Its heartbeat slower, its threads less taut. The oppressive weight that had pressed into every corridor now felt like a turning tide. "We need to go," I said gently. "Now." Riven shook his head. "It won't let us leave." I stood. The weaver watched in silence. "I think," I said slowly, "it already has." A soft rumble rolled through the chamber. The walls shifted, not closing, but opening, threads parting in long, sweeping arcs to reveal a rising path out of the pit. Riven stared in disbelief. You, you changed it. Not changed, I whispered. It said rewritten. He hesitated only a moment before grabbing my hand. We climbed the rising pathway, step by trembling step. The bodies in the pit began to dim, their crimson glow fading like dying embers. Some sighed softly, peacefully, as if being released. Halfway up, I turned back. The weaver floated at the center of the chamber, still watching. But for the first time, it bowed its head. Not in submission, in acknowledgement, in completion. The path rose higher. The threads parted ahead of us. And for the first time since I entered this place, I saw daylight. The light was faint at first, thin, silver, trembling as if afraid to touch the labyrinth's darkness. But as we climbed, it grew brighter, warmer, widening into a narrow break overhead. The threads curled away from it like retreating shadows, unraveling silently. Riven squeezed my hand so tightly it trembled. Is it real? His voice carried both hope and dread, two emotions that didn't know how to share the same breath. Yes, I whispered. It's real. We reached the top of the sloping rise, and the last wall of threaded darkness dissolved into drifting red dust. We stepped forward, and the labyrinth's ceiling opened like a wound healing in reverse, pulling apart thread by thread until a small, perfect circle of open air hovered above us. Cold winds spilled in. Fresh air. Sky. Freedom. Riven let out a shaky laugh that broke into a sob. It sounded like something resurrected, unsteady from disuse. I should have run then, climbed out, pulled myself into the world above, left the weaver and its endless corridors behind. But as the wind brushed my face, something held my feet in place. A tug. Not from the labyrinth. From inside me. I turned. Far below, the weaver still watched from the depths. Its form was dimmer. Now, its threads no longer blazing with power. The entire chamber had softened, glowing as if lit from deep within by quiet embers instead of flames. It was changing, unraveling its hunger, rewriting itself, because I had chosen not to become its echo or its prisoner. I had chosen to become its counterweight. This balance, this thread pulled free but not destroyed, a possibility it had never woven before. Riven followed my gaze, breathing unevenly. It's letting us go, he whispered. After all these years, I laid a hand on his shoulder as he swayed. We go together, I said. He nodded, tears tracking down the grime on his cheeks. We looked up at the circle of sky again. The wind streamed down in cold ribbons, lifting loose strands of my hair, stirring the red dust around our feet. Riven climbed first. His hands slipped, but he pushed on, driven by a desperation sharpened into something like courage. I followed, muscles shaking, breath burning. The moment my fingers touched the edge, sunlight warmed my knuckles. For a second, a terrifying thought surfaced. What if this is another illusion? Another thread meant to bind me? But the sunlight wasn't warm like the labyrinth's glow. It was imperfect, soft, honest, real. I pulled myself up. The ground outside was damp. Rain-soaked pavement, cracked and stained with city grime. The entrance we'd emerged from was nothing more than a rusty service grate tucked between two half-collapsed buildings. No glow seeped through. No threads followed. Just quiet. Riven collapsed beside me, face lifted to the sky in disbelief. The clouds overhead were gray, heavy with drizzle. Cars hummed faintly from nearby streets. A siren wailed distantly. Life, indifferent and unbroken, continued around us. We had been changed, but the world had not. For a long time, neither of us spoke. I didn't know if I could, not with all the threads of memory, fear, and newfound possibility tangled inside me. Riven finally broke the silence. What happens now? I didn't answer immediately, because the truth was still forming, still weaving itself into something I could name. In my chest, beneath skin and bone, I felt the faintest pulsing warmth, the filament the weaver had placed inside me. Not binding me, not controlling me, just waiting. A key, or a compass, or a promise. I think, I said slowly, the labyrinth isn't finished with me. Riven's expression crumpled. You're going back? Not now, I said, shaking my head. Probably not soon, but someday. Why? He asked, bewildered. After everything it did to us? I looked down at my hand. In the veins beneath the skin, I thought I saw a faint red shimmer, like a thread catching the last light of dusk. Because it tested me? I said softly. But I tested it too. Riven stared at me, speechless. I continued, my voice steadier than I felt. I saw what it could become. A place that doesn't swallow people, but frees them. A place that doesn't rewrite destiny, but reveals it. I looked back at the dark grate. And someday, it'll need me to finish what started down there. The wind picked up, scattering the red dust that still clung to my clothes. It vanished into the air like embers carried away from dying fire. Riven shivered. I hope you're wrong, he whispered. I hope I'm not. We sat together on the cracked pavement until the cold seeped into our bones. People passed the alley mouth but never looked inside. The city moved on, unaware of the labyrinth breathing beneath it, unaware of the weaver bowing in silence, unaware of the thread stitched behind my heart. When I finally stood, the last hint of red shimmered once more under my skin. I wasn't its prisoner. I wasn't its victim. I wasn't its echo. I was something new. A thread pulled free and now free to pull back. As I stepped into the waking world again, I felt the labyrinth deep below, settling like a colossal heart adjusting to a new rhythm. My rhythm. Its whisper followed me. Not a command, not a call, but a certainty carried on the wind. You will return. And when you do, the path will be yours to weave. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because the red thread was no longer behind me. It was mine to carry forward.